You're listening to the Divorce and Your Money Show, the #1 show on iTunes discussing the complex business of divorce. I'm your host, Sean Lehman, MBA and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. You can learn more at divorceandyourmoney.com. One of the bigger questions I get from people all the time, or one of the big misconceptions, is that going to court is a good idea in divorce. Well, I have an attorney with me named Karen Covey. I'll leave the intro for the interview, but she's going to tell you why, after decades of experience, divorce court is not what you think it is. It's not like the TV shows, and it's certainly not like the movies, and it's not an area that you really want to use to settle your divorce. And there's a reason that about 95% of divorces are settled outside of court. And so Karen's going to walk through that with you. And then we're also going to cover another very important subject. In my coaching sessions, I get to work one-on-one with you all over the country. And some of you say, you know what, your attorney isn't responding to me, or I don't know if my attorney's doing a good job, or I don't like my attorney. I mean, they're highly rated, but I don't think this is going well. Well, these are legitimate concerns, and what do you do in that situation? What is the way that you should manage the relationship with your attorney, and what expectations should you have about that relationship? So in this interview with Karen, we're going to get into those two subjects, why court is not a place that you really want to use to resolve your divorce unless you absolutely have to, and also what to do if you're unhappy with your attorney. So without further ado, here is the interview with Karen. So today I have with me a very special guest. I have Karen Covey, divorce advisor, attorney, mediator, coach, and author of When Happily Ever After Ends: How to Survive Your Divorce Emotionally, Financially, and Legally. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and experience before we jump into some questions?
Well, I have been an attorney for more years than you'll get me to admit. And about a few decades ago, let's just say, I started my own practice in divorce. And I started as a divorce attorney and quickly realized that the system didn't make sense to me. So I thought, well, maybe mediation would be better. So I became a mediator. I also learned about collaborative divorce. So I'm a collaborative divorce lawyer, and I kept going on. And I finally wrote a book to say the system doesn't make sense, and then became a coach and an arbitrator. So I help people go through divorce every way that there is. And now I've come to the point where I believe that really the best way for people to go through divorce is to empower themselves through education, through understanding what they're facing, so that they can make better choices for themselves.
Given your range of experience with the different methods of divorce, let's dig into a couple of things related to that. The first being is a lot of people assume that, since divorce is a legal issue, that you should go to court to have your divorce resolved. Is that not the best option in your opinion?
Yes and no. Here's the thing. The truth is the only way you can get divorced is for a judge to divorce you. So ultimately, no matter which divorce process you use, and there are a lot of them today that will now keep you out of court, at some point, somebody, either you or your lawyer, depending on where you live, are going to have to go to court and say to a judge, here's the paperwork, and the judge has to read it, approve it, and sign off on it. So at some point, everybody's going to go to court, but that doesn't mean that you have to use the court system to resolve your divorce. And for most people, going to court and fighting in court, which is the traditional way of going through a divorce, is probably the most expensive, the most time-consuming, and the most destructive way you can possibly divorce.
Why is that? What is it about going and fighting in front of a judge? Why is that process not ideal?
Well, the way the system is set up, it's an adversarial system. So you can't go in and say, we just want to dissolve our marriage as friends. Immediately, the very first pleading, which is a document that you file in court, says it's you versus your spouse. So it immediately pits you as adversaries. And the way the process is set up it's very contentious. And the more you fight, it's just really hard to spend hours or days or months or years fighting with your spouse in court when everything that you do is designed to win. And so you're always trying to get the better of your spouse. You're always trying to win. You're always trying to think of an edge and get them. And then it encourages conflict. And the more conflict you have, the more conflict you breed. And it's really rough after you've just spent a day in court having your lawyer tear your spouse's face off to sit next to them at your kid's school recital and try to make nice. Human nature is different. Human beings don't work that way. So that's why the court process, the litigation process, it's just so destructive.
And what about the judges themselves? Do they get into all the details of your case, or how does that work? And what I'm getting at is a lot of people, when I speak with them, they want to tell me who cheated and who did this or did whatever. And it's a lot of accusations. And of course I listen because it's important. But does the judge care about these things? And do they put the time in for every case that comes across their desk?
No, no, and no. I mean, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the first thing is people do believe, like you said, that they're going to go to court and they're going to get a chance to tell their story. What they don't understand is that the court is run by very, very strict rules. There's limits on what you can say, what the judge, can hear, what they can allow into evidence, and how much time you have to do that. And the court systems are really backed up. The judges are very busy. They have a lot of cases to hear, and it's not that they don't care about you or they're not going to try to do the right thing. They are going to try to do the right thing, but the constraints on them are such that you don't get to just go into court and say, here's my story, judge. There's no time for that. You will never get that opportunity. And the judge, if you want to tell them, oh, my spouse, he cheated on me or she cheated on me or, he did this or she did that, judge doesn't care. The judge only cares about what is legally relevant in your case. And what's legally relevant is usually a whole lot less than what's emotionally important to you. So if you want to talk, if you want to go off on your spouse and tell somebody all the horrible things that they did, I mean, I don't mean to be brash, but really the person to tell that to is your best friend, your family, or a therapist. If you want to tell it to the judge, A, you're not going to get a chance, and B, even if you did get a chance to say some of it, most of it probably isn't going to make a difference in your case.
Right, because the judges have to follow what's in the law.
Mm-hmm.
Even within that, I think that depending upon where you might live, the law is potentially subject to some interpretation. And so if I get a different judge, and what I mean is with the local judges, since you know your local area. Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Chicago.
So in the Chicago area, in the family court system, there's various judges. If you were to have a different judge, do you get or could you potentially have different results on the same case?
Absolutely. The law, people think the law is this big black and white thing. But the truth is the law, and especially divorce law, has a lot of shades of gray to it. So yes, there are some things that are kind of set in stone, but there's a lot of things that are open to interpretation. And how the law is interpreted can vary from courthouse to courthouse and from judge to judge within the same courthouse. And people say, well, how is that fair? The truth is, whether it is fair or it's not fair, that's just the way it is. And you can complain about it, but that's what you have to deal with and live with, which is another reason why I say that going to court doesn't make a whole lot of sense for people, because the result that you can get, how one judge is going to interpret the law and interpret the facts of your case and apply the facts, the law to the facts, is going to be different than how another judge would do it. So it's hard to know for sure what you're going to get, and because the risk of getting something different than what you want or think is right is so high, you're almost always going to be better off negotiating your own deal yourself rather than letting some judge tell you what he or she thinks is right.
I think that's a good comment. And Given you've practiced in the same geographic area for such a long time, do you have a pretty good sense of the judges and their personalities and kind of what they value?
I like to think so. But what's important is not what I think or my experience. It's it's how people who are listening to the podcast, what their experience is. And what that means is that if you are going to go to court, the most important thing that you can do for yourself is to get a local lawyer in your area who knows those judges and who understands how that court system works and what the culture is in that court system, so that they can give you advice not just based on the law, but on what is likely to happen in your case. And then you listen to that person and listen to their advice, because you're only going to go in front of this judge for your case, but the lawyers are in front of the judges all the time with a lot of different cases, so they have a better idea of what any particular judge may or may not do.
I think that's a nice segue into talking about your attorney. There's a common perception, even on television. I've been watching the new HBO series on divorce, that you need to hire an aggressive attorney. Is that a fair perception, or what should people actually be looking for?
If you want a bloodbath, go ahead and hire the most aggressive attorney. If you don't, then that's not the right choice for you. And here's the thing. I don't pretend to know what's right for every person in the world. I'm not God. But the people who are listening, they've got to decide what's right for them. If you want a divorce that's relatively amicable and you hire the aggressive lawyer, you're going to create a war. But if you have a spouse who really wants to go to war and you hire a softer attorney, somebody who's better at negotiating or mediating, and your spouse has the aggressive lawyer, you're going to get hammered. So the first thing that you need to do before you go pick an attorney is decide which divorce process do you want to use. Do you want to use collaborative divorce? Well, if you want to use collaborative divorce and you want that process to be successful for you, you want it to work, then you have to hire an attorney who's been trained in collaborative divorce. Otherwise, you're going to get a mess. If you want to go to court and fight, then you hire a fighter. If you want to mediate, then you hire a lawyer who's mediation friendly and maybe who is a mediator, as well. Although no lawyer can be your lawyer and your mediator in the same case. But even still, there are some lawyers who more comfortable with mediation. They support mediation. You're going to have a very different experience in mediation if that person is your lawyer than you would if you hired the shark, aggressive gladiator attorney who's going to tell you that mediation is bunk and you should do this and this and demand that, and they can blow the whole mediation up for you. And then the mediation process isn't going to work, and you're going to blame, the mediator or the process itself, when the real reason that it blew up was not the mediator, it was your lawyer.
Right. I think that's great advice. You've mentioned collaborative divorce more than once. Why don't you just define what that is for the audience and a little bit more as to how it works?
Collaborative divorce is a special kind of divorce process where you and your spouse go get collaborative divorce attorneys, and the four of you put together a team. So you may use a divorce coach to help manage emotions. You may need a divorce financial professional or a child specialist. Depends on what you need. You decide as you go, or once you get your attorneys, you decide what kind of support you need. But you sit and you, with your spouse and with the lawyers and with anyone else that you need, and you work on your issues outside of court. So all of the sessions that you have and all of the negotiations happen in a conference room, not in a courtroom. And the key defining thing about collaborative divorce is that everybody is working together to try to get you divorced in the most efficient way possible and in a way that meets your needs and your interests and the needs and interests of your family. So it's a very, very different process than litigation. But the key defining factor of collaborative divorce is that if the process doesn't work, if somebody decides, I'm just going to go to court because I'm not getting my way, then all of the professionals withdraw and you start again with new lawyers in the court system. So what that does, it gives you an incentive to keep negotiating, and it gives the lawyers less of an incentive to try to blow up the case, because let's be honest, lawyers make money. Most divorce lawyers bill by the hour, so they make money when you fight. So in order to keep the lawyers from causing a fight or egging you on in a fight, in collaborative divorce, the lawyers say, okay, if you go to court, we're out of a job. And the financial professional is the same, and the coaches are the same. So it's a really, really supported way of getting divorced and staying out of court to do it.
That's interesting. And if you're someone who hasn't decided upon what divorce method that you want to use, how would you know if collaborative divorce is a good process for you?
The best way is to educate yourself. I would go online on my website, KarenCovey.com. I've got a lot of information about all of the divorce processes, because I firmly believe that every person and every marriage is different. And so some people are going to need, mediation. Some people will be better off with collaborative. Some people will be better off with litigation. So the first thing you do is you educate yourself about the process. If you want more specific one-on-one information, then again, look up lawyers in your area and find lawyers who do the different kinds of divorce that are out there, like a lawyer who will do mediation, a lawyer who will do collaborative divorce, a lawyer who's a litigator. Interview those people and get information from them, because the problem is the quality of people's lives after their divorce depends on how they go through the divorce. And that's something that nobody tells you in the beginning. And so what do most people do when they want a divorce? They go to a lawyer, right? And whatever that lawyer tells them, they say, oh, okay, well, that's how it is. And they don't go any farther. But it's just like that old saying, like, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, if you happen to walk into a litigator's office and you say, I want a divorce, what do I do? They're going to say, well, you go to court. And if you walk into a mediator's office and you say, a mediative lawyer, and you say, well, I want to do my divorce, they're going to say, you should go to mediation. Every lawyer is biased towards the kind of law that they practice. So to get an unbiased opinion, you need to either get your information from a third party or talk to each different kind of lawyer and say, what do you think? Does this make sense to you? And hopefully if if they're being honest with you, they'll say, yeah, it looks like you've got a fight on your hands. This is what you need. Or no, I think you can work this out. This is what you need.
Right. I think that's very helpful advice. And so for people who have gotten a pretty good sense of what method will make sense for them as far as getting divorced, and they have to choose an attorney, how do you recommend that they go about starting to find an initial attorney to represent them in their case?
The best way is still, in my opinion, word of mouth. If you know other people who have been through a divorce and who are happy with their lawyer, those are the lawyers that you want to call. If you don't know anybody who's been through a divorce, or you don't have any, acquaintances who are lawyers or anything like that, then you've got to take a different approach. Bar associations and divorce organizations often have lists of lawyers who they know, who they've worked with, who they can recommend. You can go on the internet and look on the internet, but just be careful if you do that. The lawyer that has the sharpest website, or that's, ranked up on the top of, number one on Google, on page one of Google, or has an advertisement on Google, that doesn't mean that they're the best lawyer. That means that they have the best advertising budget. So I'm not saying that they're the worst lawyer either. It's just you don't know what you're getting. You can use the internet. The internet is a really good place to verify whether somebody has the same approach as you do, whether they're on the same page as you do, how long have they been in practice, what's their specialty. It's a great place to verify information, but to go find lawyers that way, yes, you can do it, and it's not a bad idea if you have no other choice, but it's kind of you just have to be careful, that's all.
I think that's a great answer. And in your book, When Happily Ever After Ends, you have a very interesting section about what happens when you're unhappy with your attorney. I'm sure you've had clients at some point who, justifiably or not, feel upset for some reason. What do you do in that situation as a client and as an attorney?
Let me start as an attorney. As an attorney, I understand that I'm not dealing with people who are at the best time in their life. The truth is, most of my clients are not happy to begin with. And sometimes they have expectations of me or the system that aren't realistic, or they're unhappy with how things are going, and so that transfers to me, and I get that. But if a client has a problem, my approach is to say, let's sit down and talk about it. And what do you want? What do you feel that way? And if I don't think that I can do a good job for them or continue to represent them, or our relationship is not where it needs to be for me to be effective, then we can end the relationship. And as a client, what your listeners want to do is, if they have a problem with their attorney, take a similar approach. The first thing you do is you call that attorney and say, we got to talk. This is what I expected. This is what is happening. There's a gap between what I expected and what is happening, and I'm confused because I thought you were supposed to fix that. And it may be that when you have that conversation, the lawyer will say, we'll talk about what the client's expectations were, and maybe those expectations are out of line, and what you as a client think can happen just isn't possible, and there's no lawyer in the world that can give it to you. On the other hand, it may be that your lawyer isn't the right lawyer for you, that they're not doing a good job, or they're not, you hired the person that you thought would be a really great attorney in court, and they're not. They're just not as on top of their game as you would like or need. Then you have a conversation about that, and then you make your decisions. On the other hand, the biggest complaint that I've heard from people about their lawyers is that lawyers won't get back to them, and they don't talk to them. And that's a whole nother set of frustration. So if you're having some problem and your lawyer won't talk to you, and I would say try a couple times, call them, email them, put it in writing that you need to talk to them. If they still don't talk to you, or if you're still unhappy with their services, even after you've talked to them, then it's time to decide whether you should go to another lawyer or not. And you as the client always have the right to change lawyers, always. I know people think, well, I signed a retainer agreement with them, I'm stuck. No, you're not. You just say, I'm sorry, this isn't working out, and you find a new lawyer. The problem is, you're going to have to pay that new lawyer, and you're going to have to pay that new lawyer to get up to speed in your case. So if you've blown through all your money and you have no money to pay a new lawyer, then as a practical matter, you got a problem.
Right, that makes sense. And could it be the case that maybe you just get an attorney for a second opinion? Do attorneys do that?
Yes. That's another great idea, for checking up on your attorney, or for just easing your own state of mind. It gives you peace of mind to say, look, I'm not sure that what's happening here is the right thing. So if you're going to talk to another lawyer, it's important that first you call that lawyer and you tell them, I'm looking for a second opinion, because most lawyers will give you one, but not all. What you need to know is that your own lawyer doesn't necessarily even have to know that you're getting a second opinion. But when you go for that second opinion, you've got to have a fairly complete record of what's going on in your case up to that point. Because if you're going to say to a new lawyer, does this make sense to you what's going on? They've got to be able to see what's going on. They're going to need copies of all of the court orders and all of the pleadings and all of everything that, the financial information, everything that's gone before that, before you went into them. So if you're going to go for a second opinion, the best advice that I could give to anyone is talk to a lawyer first, make sure that's what they do, and be prepared so you walk in the door with everything you need when you go for that opinion.
And Karen, can you tell us a little bit about your book, When Happily Ever After Ends?
Yeah, I wrote that because, like I mentioned before, I was just frustrated with the court system and the way it works, and I just thought there had to be a better way. I thought that if people had information about what divorce is really like themselves, they would be empowered to make better choices. So the book goes through, it talks about the different kinds of divorce processes. It talks about what information you're going to have to gather, how the system works. And there's a lot of, I used a lot of little vignettes and stories and examples of other people that were all fictionalized. I mean, they were based on real stories, but you can't tell who's who and everything. You know, the names have been changed to protect everybody, as they say. And so it helps give people an idea of what they're really looking at when they are facing divorce. So hopefully, again, they can make better choices and take a different view of their divorce than maybe what they had in the beginning.
And what's the best place for people to contact you?
The best place to reach me is on my website, which is KarenCovey.com, and it's KarenCovy.com.
Excellent. We'll include a link to both the book and your website in the show notes. Karen, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before you go, I want to make sure you don't miss some important resources, all available at divorceandyourmoney.com. The first thing you do when you get there is you should sign up for the email list. I will send you exclusive and personal information to help you regardless of where you are in the divorce process. Second is you should check out the course, Divorce 101, Steps to Take Before Divorce. On the website, you click on the course tab, you'll see Divorce 101, and it teaches you everything that you need to know before getting an attorney. It will save you thousands of dollars and a lot of time as you go through the divorce process. And it also includes a copy of my book, Divorce and Your Money, the No Nonsense Guide, when you buy the course. And if you complete the course, you will also get a future discount on one-on-one coaching sessions. At checkout, you enter the promo code podcast to get an exclusive discount to the podcast listeners that I don't offer anywhere else. The third thing you do on the website is consider one-on-one coaching. I get to work with you all across the United States with a variety of issues related to your divorce. We can do things like help complete your financial affidavit or statement of net worth, depending upon what state you live in, help you gather that information and get it completed. The second thing that we could do together is maybe help craft your settlement. Figure out whether you should keep certain investment accounts or the marital home or other assets, and figure out what the appropriate trade-offs are for your divorce. And we can also evaluate whether you can afford the settlement. And once the settlement is done, is help you plan and prepare for the rest of your life. So on the Divorce and Your Money website, click on the coaching tab. And if you want that one-on-one personal help, we can do that, and you can book an introductory call, and we can get started from there. Lastly, subscribe to the show, and you will get new episodes automatically. And if you're on iTunes, it would be great if you could leave a review. It takes 20 seconds. Just leave a 5-star review, and it helps other people discover this show. I'm your host, Sean Lehman, MBA and Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. Thank you for listening.